and CEO. Started that over 10 years ago. Prior to that, did work with NASA and the DoD, and also holds over 10 patents. So please welcome to the stage, Krissa Watry.
All right. Can I get a mic check? Awesome. So thank you for attending. It's a pleasure to be up here today and explain a lot of the lessons learned that we've had over the last 5 years working with the US military. So just a little bit about Dynepic. Started the company over a decade ago. After I was designing and launching spacecraft and have satellites orbiting overhead and boxes that have docked with the space station, I really wanted to make an impact on this planet. And so our vision at Dynepic is to level up humanity. Our main product at Dynepic is called MOTAR, and I hope that you find that it's your effortless path to XR at scale. A quick video just to kind of introduce it so you can understand who we are.
Extended reality offers transformative potential for enterprises around the world. Corporations must integrate XR to maintain their competitive edge. When selecting the right infrastructure, ease of use, security, and ability to scale must be top of mind. Dynepic's award-winning MOTAR platform is your effortless path to XR at scale. With 3 unique activations, MOTAR provides an all-in-one platform that can be hosted in your company's secure cloud to engage your workforce with diverse capabilities in extended reality. Already proven in the US military, MOTAR hosts, tracks, and delivers highly sensitive digital assets, leveling up training and operations with uncompromised security. Starting at MOTAR's core, the hub provides a permission-based and XR-optimized content management system for all of your digital asset needs. From Studio, securely create and deliver your immersive applications using reusable building blocks and toolkits. Working on top of MOTAR Core, an XR-optimized training management system will level up your workforce and capture and display performance metrics through easy-to-understand dashboards. With MOTAR Insights, track workforce readiness all in one place. MOTAR can effortlessly become part of your normal business operations with seamless integration to your existing corporate infrastructure. Get started with MOTAR today.
All right, so MOTAR has been fielded within the US military where it has an authorization to operate, to hold controlled unclassified information. So obviously security is top of mind. Over the last 5 years, we've activated more than 64 different technologies, those technologies that you see on the floor today. So XR companies, but also the technologies that support it. So even just like PDF reader technologies and others. And we've activated over 100 different military organizations. So I think defense is really driving this industry. They're investing a ton of capital to figure out how to operate. And maybe even started it back in the 1940s with, you see there, a gun sight, which is a digital layer on the physical world. So I believe the military is definitely one to watch. And a lot of the folks that we work with in the military are some of the leaders on the floor today. So let's talk about lessons learned. So I tried to distill my top 5 lessons learned. There's many of them. So if I don't hit something and you want to know more details afterwards, please come, talk to me and come to our booth. The first lesson learned, so number 5, apps are not infrastructure. The US military in 2019 ran a mixed reality platform challenge, and they ran that because they've invested over the last decade before that in a bunch of augmented reality, virtual reality, AI, all these different technologies, and they're all disparate. they had no way to deliver those across the entire enterprise. And what they realized was, while those shiny objects were the first thing that they did for pilot projects, they now needed a holistic infrastructure that could deliver all of those amazing technologies to the force. And so with that, I would just impress upon you, when you're looking at an amazing technology and say, hey, that's going to solve something for my corporation, ask yourself, is that the infrastructure that's going to scale it across the organization, or just a specific application that's maybe going to help one or two departments within your organization? And really start to think about your XR strategy and the XR infrastructure you need, that you can start small and then scale it across your organization. So that XR infrastructure really needs to be that foundational layer that can help you go from pilot to scale. And of course, obviously, if you're at AES, you probably know that XR encompasses VR, AR, and MR. So from an Air Force perspective, I'll just look at the training use case that they had. They basically had instructor pilots and pilot trainees. And they looked at basically this analysis that they had to interact with all these different systems, things from the big simulators. They interacted with, in a classroom environment with PDFs and PowerPoints. And then they, did live flights and debriefings. And when they analyzed this whole process, it was very manual. All these systems are siloed, nothing's connected, and the instructors basically have to interact physically together with the student at each one of these training events, which is very manual. And so what they wanted to do was rethink this and say, okay, how would an XR infrastructure change how they do operations and allow them to gain more feedback? So they basically came up with this concept of a training data hub. So a training management system, a content management system, a centralized location where instructor pilots and the pilot trainees can come together to access this networked objects or network simulators, what they call their lightweight sims. And so now everything is centered around the data and being able to have student-centered learning. So now instead of the instructor having to be present for the student to learn, the student can go to this one-stop shop, train across all these devices. The metrics can come back into a centralized repository where now the instructor gets to change from being a facilitator to actually being an expert SME. They then took it a next step, and that's really where MOTAR comes in. They needed that holistic infrastructure that could deliver all the different applications. And if they've spent money scanning an aircraft and building a digital twin of the F-35 or the C-130, these different aircraft that they have, why would it just be used for pilots? Why would they not use it across the maintenance career field and all the other career fields? So within that central training data hub, they needed to be able to store all of these different assets in a permission-based manner so that they can be reused. So not only the airmen creators creating content or the instructional designers putting that into courses, but the external ecosystem of the DoD contractors being able to leverage those assets to rapidly build applications. And then being able to field those across all the different kind of career fields. Another key aspect here was they needed it to hook into their authoritative data systems as well that they already had, like scheduling management and personnel management systems. So kind of that first takeaway that apps are not XR infrastructure. The infrastructure must integrate easily with existing corporate IT. It should support open standards like OpenXR, so you're not locked into a proprietary framework. It should enable the seamless end-to-end delivery. It should enable easy security and privacy compliance out of the gate. And while it might start you small, so you can start with a pilot, it should future-proof your organization into the future. And with this, what the military found was picking a, let's say it's a maintenance training platform. Yes, that might be great to create maintenance training, but to have a holistic platform You need the infrastructure provider to not be a content creator, because otherwise it really does kind of lock and silo you into what that content creator is creating, versus allowing you as an organization to create an open ecosystem and bring in the best technologies that you need in that ecosystem. So really look for an XR infrastructure that doesn't make content of their own, but can give you that seamless infrastructure so you can source what you really need. Number 4, user experience matters. When you look at all this amazing technology in your organization, it's brand new technology. You're trying to change your workforce behavior with new ways to operate. If you have disjointed and siloed experiences and everything's, one company does it one way and another company does it another, it just is more destined to fail. The one thing you can control is trying to have a standardized and intuitive user experience, something that has your brand and the same avatars and the same controls all the way through, whether that application or that training lesson was created internally by your own developers or created externally with external developers. You should work on having a common user experience. And that literally is what we did. For Maintenance Training Next back in 2020, they had 4 different AR, VR providers and an AI company. And so they had built almost 200 training lessons to completely revamp how they do maintenance training in the US Air Force. So they replaced the entire level 3 crew chief fundamentals course with a complete XR course. And they had the 4 different vendors creating all these different types of content, plus the Air Force also creating content, plus mixing it with PowerPoints and Captivate, other web-based content. So MOTAR really became that central training data hub, that centralized place that all the different airmen were able to come. They were able to launch all this content across devices in a seamless manner, and they had one place. They didn't care who created the AR lesson or the VR lesson. They were just training. One of the coolest parts of this was we were able to activate those 4 companies within 90 days to make this program a success. And they were able to show that they trained in half of the time within 7 points of the historical average. So I think it's a great proof point for XR. The biggest part of that, though, was they had iPads that they used at part task trainers with augmented reality. They had the learners on desktop computers, and they had them on headsets. So make sure when you guys pick an XR infrastructure that you think of an infrastructure that can work across devices seamlessly. It's not only across different vendors and different technologies, but across all the different devices as well. The other key part was having common interactives. So if you go into one app and you press the joystick forward and it teleports you, and then you walk into the next app and that walks you forward and you use the trigger for the teleport, it just makes a disjointed experience. The more you can get your brand kit into a developer kit that then you can deploy out to your corporation, both internally and externally, and this is not hard, right? And then allow those developers within 2 clicks to allow them to create content for your brand in a rapid fashion. That's exactly what we do with the MOTAR SDK for the Air Force. This is basically just in a few clicks that they can have that common interaction as well as multiplayer working across all the different content. All right, number 3, complete data design early. What are you trying to prove with your application you're designing? And make sure the data you're going to get out of that application actually is going to be the success criteria to say it worked or it didn't work, or the learner's learning, and that you got that proper data coming out. Do not let the developer decide what your triggers and data is going to be. Make sure you have an instructional designer or data engineer, or think about this ahead of time. In the Air Force, in the US military in general, they use what's called XAPI, or an experience API. It's basically a framework of actor, verb, and object. So you can imagine if it was reported back from they're in a virtual reality scene, The VR application can report back this XAPI statement, and that might say, John torqued a fan blade bolt. So that XAPI statement becomes very important. I know it's a little bit of an eye chart, so I think they're going to make these available later. But basically, those XAPI statements can flow back from all these different XR applications into an XR-optimized learning management system like MOTAR. And so now you can really walk through and see, oh, the learner did this task properly. The AI virtual instructor maybe provided an interjection to correct something the learner did. And as you read through these statements, you don't need a total recording of what happened in the scene. You don't need to rewatch it. The instructor in very quick fashion can understand, hey, this learner took this VR application once. They spent like 18 minutes in this VR application. They had to take the quiz inside the application twice, and they got all these different interjections and ultimately passed, with below an 80%. But again, you can get a lot of data out, but you have to think about what data you want out of that application and start thinking about that before you start coding. Team training is also important. So if you have one individual on the other side of the world and an individual here, they can train together. How do they collaborate in a team training environment? And how are you going to gather the data showing how they collaborate together? Make sure if you're picking an XR optimized training management system that you can successfully track not only a single learner, but multiple learners connected across the globe working together. And then finally, make sure you correlate the different applications. So I talked about in Maintenance Training Next, they had over 200 different lessons. Those lessons were then cross-correlated to the competencies of a level 3 maintainer. So as the learners went through the environment and they successfully completed the applications, the lessons, they were getting digitally badged with competencies along the way. And so now in a central training record, they can see the workforce readiness, they can see all the competencies that that airman has, and now they can do really cool stuff with mission planning, leveraging AI, reasoning over this data. Some folks in the training space take in all this data and think they're just going to take in everything and then we'll analyze it. I'm going to argue, figure out what data you really want to collect, figure out what success metrics it is, and collect that. Collect clean data, allow it to be as clean as possible so you can actually get to the insights in a pretty easy fashion and make sure that those actually get revealed. I think that is the best way. We've seen some systems that have a ton of data and you really can't tell what's going on. So clean over noisy. Number 2, security isn't an afterthought. Security should be baked into your XR infrastructure from beginning to end. And when the Air Force thought about this, obviously they're thinking about it in a single tenant manner, right? So multi-tenant, maybe it's a software as a service platform, and you're on that platform with other folks. So your data is sitting right next to a competitor, even if you don't see them on that platform. Within that cloud environment, right, there's opportunity for potential data leakage or crossover. In the military, where security matters a lot, they have more of a single tenant system, still permission-based. It might be open to the entire US government, but we manage their cloud platform called MOTAR Live in a single tenant mentality for the US government. They also have Space Force taking the MOTAR Ghost and looking to put that into a classified environment where they manage it themselves. So the benefit of this is MOTAR can operate completely in a closed environment, and they can ensure no data leakage as they put this into classified enclaves. And they can even go cross-domain across different security levels. For some of our customers as well, they operate at the edge. So working MOTAR to operate completely offline and be able to roll out and sync back to the cloud. So the benefit, if you guys are thinking about technology and security for your company, think about asking the questions, hey, can this operate in my corporate cloud where my IT team can secure it? Does it need any external data connections that potentially could be data leakage out of your cloud to their systems? And if they can answer that, then that means likely it should be able to operate offline. So ask them, hey, can it operate completely offline without the internet? If the answer is yes, then you know, right, they're not gonna, there's lower likelihood of data leakage potential. And that's been a key aspect for the US military. One of the other things that they've really focused on in the US military is how do we create a collaborative ecosystem between the government members and the contractors contributing in it. The government has very specific distribution statements, and so every piece of content on MOTAR in the content management system gets tagged with who's allowed to discover, manage, distribute, remix, and use that content. So based upon that, the contractors can protect their IP from other contractors inside the ecosystem and hub, and the government can properly protect their data, but yet they all can work collaboratively together. So think about how the data gets permissioned within a CMS so that you can create this ecosystem within your company as well. The government also thought about how can we rapidly take and create content and get it delivered, because the developers making a VR experience don't have the security skills to get an authorization to operate on their own. So they basically created a continuous integration, continuous deployment pipelines that we call MOTAR Fastlane that allow those applications to come through, get all the automatic security scanning done, so the developer, in a few presses of a button, can get their application out to the warfighter's hands without being a security SME on their own. It's a pretty complex process. This is a fast lane to create immersive web applications. But the big takeaway on this is that in a few presses of a button, this should be easy, and the developer should just be able to see their application out and let all that magic under the hood happen. So when you're looking at XR infrastructure, make sure they've got security baked in so your corporate IT can get to yes faster. This just shows an immersive web app that the 367 Training Support Squadron created and had it deployed through the Fastlane as they look to go to more browser-based applications that don't even use headsets. That was the Fastlane that was used. So get to yes. This is the last one. How do you get to yes? Design for cost savings. So what you want is reusable assets. I talked about them scanning an aircraft. You need to be able to have one potential vendor or contributor in your ecosystem, scan the asset, put it out there, and then allow the other departments to be able to leverage it. Maybe you want to tag it as authoritative or certified, or you want certain folks to be able to remix it. Make sure you think about reusability. Also, look at the business case. What's the ROI? The military had an independent business case analysis done on MOTAR, and they showed that even just an initial skills training, it saved them $27,600 per airman that went through, which paid for MOTAR for the life of the airman, more than the life of an airman, during their time in the service. So clearly identify and articulate that ROI. Once you're gonna have an XR infrastructure, you now have an opportunity of like, hey, there's all these different ideas out there. You're probably sitting there going, man, which technology on the floor should I really be interested in? I would argue that you really need to look at the kind of like the cost versus utility for your organization and maybe categorize it. And at the high level, at the enterprise level of your corporation, it might be a different answer than in a certain department. So different departments might have different ideas about what's worth it. But if it's a high cost and low utility, probably not worth it for your organization. If it's, even middle utility and maybe a generally high cost, it might be worth it. So just think about when you're making your XR strategy, where do these technologies lie? And is that just for my department, or is this for the entire organization? Because people are gonna have different priorities. So given the different priorities, really think about maybe a toolkit where the enterprise, the company level, may have certain things that they care about, that they want to budget for, that address the needs of the entire organization. But then very specific departments like HR, operations, engineering might have different toolkits that they want to budget for. And I would argue, make sure your XR infrastructure can give you the analytics back on your active user base, so that you really can make the informed decisions on what's working for your organization and what's not. And definitely have an on-ramp of new innovation pipelines, right? Those new ideas coming in, because this industry is changing rapidly, and so you're always going to want to be innovating. I'd then argue get buy-in from the top. In this case, for the US military, that's Congress. In your cases, it's probably the C-suite. Make sure that they understand the value of XR within the organization. This was Congress asking basically the services for their XR strategy because they said, yes, we see value in XR. Please get us your XR strategy because we'd like to see it used. If you need help on XR strategy, we do have a free takeaway to get you started on your XR strategy in our workbook at our booth. I'm happy to talk about any of our lessons learned that I didn't talk about in this rapid talk, but I appreciate all of your time, and is there any questions?
Come on, we got one over here. Weave through.
Sean Peterson, Johnson Johnson MedTech. Specifically, when you were going from taking all the fragmented ISVs and creations and putting them under one roof, what were the biggest pain points in getting everyone to play nice to go to one platform?
That we don't compete with them. The number one reason that they were willing to activate within the platform ecosystem was that I wasn't making content, and if they came and actually activated, I might help them get more business. Actually, I was sitting next to someone at lunch, and they were asking, and I was like, oh, you should check out Tactile, right? Because we see all these different technologies now, all these different XR technologies. We can get the right solution in the right use case, but we don't compete with them.
Maybe one more quick question.
All right, thank you.
Thanks, Krissa. Okay, we're gonna head to break.